There's a moment in every coach's career where the entire arena can see it on their face. That split second where confidence drains out and confusion takes over. That moment happened to Stephanie White in the most brutal way imaginable. Standing on the sideline, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching her defensive game plan get shredded possession after possession by a team that shouldn't have been able to do it. Not a dynasty, not a team loaded with all-stars, an expansion franchise. A brand new roster stitched together from cast-offs and overlooked talent, led by a 30-year-old head coach who had never run a program at this level in his life. And somehow that team walked into the game, threw out their own playbook, and made the Indiana Fever look completely helpless. 16 points. That was the final margin, but the gap in coaching, that felt closer to 100. What made it worse wasn't just the loss itself, it was what everybody saw during the game. The cameras caught an exchange on the sideline between White and Caitlin Clark that lit up every corner of the internet within minutes. Hands in the air, intense words, a substitution that felt more like a benching. The speculation started before the final buzzer even sounded. And while some of those rumors turned out to be overblown, the tension in that moment was real. You could feel it through the screen. Something is off in Indiana right now, and it goes way deeper than one bad game.
So I'm going to be honest. Stephanie White is getting completely outclassed in the coaching department from every single coach. And I've already talked a little bit about the defense. But, like, I'm just going to talk about how teams are now adapting. Like, it's not 2024. You're not coaching against a bunch of people that should not be coaching. You're not coaching against Noelle Quinn. You're not coaching against Teresa Weatherspoon. You're not coaching against Christy Sides anymore. You're not coaching. I don't even think Trammell was a bad coach.
Because here's the thing that should terrify every single Fever fan watching this. Portland didn't beat Indiana with some revolutionary scheme. They beat them with the most basic, stripped-down approach you could possibly imagine. And they did it so convincingly that every other coaching staff in the league is now studying the film. The blueprint to dismantle Indiana's defense is officially out in the open, printed in bold letters for anyone willing to read it. And what that blueprint reveals about the Fever's future might be the most unsettling part of all.
For that. But every single team is going to walk the Fever into switches. Like, the Golden State Valkyries abused the Fever switching everything. And like, I made a video, I was like, man, there's no way Fever's still running this. And if you look at my pre-game, I'm like, oh yeah, the Fever aren't dumb enough to switch everything again. Turns out, the Fever have been switching everything. They've switched more than everyone all year. And do you know that there are 3 Indiana Fever players in the top 10 list of who gets ISO'd on the most? So basically, opposing teams' offenses against the Fever,
Let's talk about what actually happened in this game because the details are almost hard to believe. Alex Sarama, the head coach of the Portland Fire.
I genuinely believe that, she's lost every single coaching battle. She lost a coaching battle to a 30-year-old who has not really coached at any sort of a level as a head coach. Yes, even when he was with London Lions, involved with that team, yes, that is a high level of basketball. Yes, he became like an NBA development coach. I have no question about it that Alex Sarama is a smart basketball person, a really smart basketball person. And like, I know there are a lot of people
that made a decision before tip-off that sounds insane on paper. He told his players to ignore their offensive system, not adjust it, not tweak it, ignore it entirely. Every set they had practiced, every play they had drawn up in preparation for the season, all of it went out the window. And what did he replace it with? Nothing. Literally nothing complex at all. His instruction was painfully simple. Walk side to side, dribble into screens, wait for the Fever to switch, then attack the mismatch. That was the entire offensive game plan. No elaborate pick and roll sequences. No staggered screens or pin downs designed to free up shooters. Just movement. Basic, deliberate, almost lazy-looking movement that forced Indiana into switches over and over and over again. And every single time the Fever switched, Portland had exactly the matchup they wanted. A guard on a big on a guard, a slower defender on a faster attacker. It didn't matter which combination came out of the switch because all of them worked in Portland's favor. The Fire didn't need to be creative. They didn't need to outsmart anyone with complex XS and O's. They just needed Indiana to do exactly what Indiana always does. And Indiana delivered right on cue. Think about that for a second. An expansion team playing its 3rd game in 4 nights, a roster still learning each other's tendencies.
that there are 3 Indiana Fever players in the top 10 list of who gets ISO'd on the most. So basically, opposing teams' offenses against the Fever, I've never seen this before. In the year of 2026, in a year where so many people believe that ISO ball is like dying. ISO ball is dying. Like at the same, like ISO ball is now a thing that teams don't like to run. Teams like to run sets. They don't like to go isolation.
Led by a coach making his name at this level for the first time, came into a game against a franchise built around the most hyped player in league history and won by 16 points using an approach that could be scribbled on a napkin. That's not a bad night. That's not an off game where shots didn't fall and the basketball gods were unkind. That's an exposure. A complete and total tactical exposure that announced to every front office, every coaching staff,
run their sets. And I don't think Stephanie White fully understands how much smarter coaches are than they were a few years ago. Like, just because Becky Hammon switched everything against you last year as a coach, and you got so bamboozled that you didn't realize that you could have walked Aaliyah Boston onto Jewel Lloyd every possession, or Caitlin onto Kirsten Bell every possession and went at them. Instead, you were somehow getting Caitlin switched on to Kirsten Bell and then running another screen so that Jackie Young got matched back onto.
And every film room in the league that the Fever's defense has a fatal flaw. And the scariest part isn't that Portland figured it out. It's that they made it look so absurdly easy that
went out with a coaching strategy, and you went out with the mentality of a coach from 40 years ago of, I'm running my play, I'm not adapting, doesn't mean that other teams aren't going to adapt. The Portland Fire didn't run an offense for the whole game. Alex Sarama, who is a super coach, a super basketball mind, has shown, like, he is a smart coach who doesn't seem to get spooked in any way, who has a whole bunch of players that would fucking would take a bullet for each other.
Now everyone else knows exactly how to replicate it.
I wants him to switch 1 through 5, and then before the game it's like, oh yeah, I think we play faster with Raven Johnson. Like, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on? Like, we are sitting here watching a coach get outcoached. And by the way, I like Alex Sarama. It is unacceptable to get outcoached by a coach who literally has said, everything that we do on offense, ignore all of what we do on offense and just start walking side to side and just setting a couple of flare screens until Caitlin gets matched up to.
To understand why this is happening, you have to understand the defensive philosophy that Stephanie White has built her entire system around. It's called switching 1 through 5. In simple terms, it means that every time an opposing player sets a screen, the 2 Fever defenders involve swap assignments. Every screen, every time, no exceptions. It doesn't matter if it's a 6'4" center screening for a 5'9" guard. It doesn't matter if the result puts your smallest player on the opponent's biggest weapon. The rule is the rule, switch everything.
Thing that we do as a team, ignore it all. Ignore it all and just walk into switches. Just walk into switches. That is what we talk. That is what we call how to beat the Indiana Fever right now. All you have to do is because every team has a good downhill driver. Just walk side to side. Just walk. Just dribble side to side. You don't even set screens. Just dribble side to side and just exchange, and the Fever will just push off. So you go up and like, okay, what are the mismatches? Okay, if Kelsey Mitchell's on the weak side, just set a pin or set a flare screen as a big. Big starts in the wing.
Now in theory, switching can work. There are teams in professional basketball that switch effectively, but those teams have something very specific that makes it viable. They have rosters full of long, versatile, interchangeable defenders who can credibly guard multiple positions. Think about squads loaded with 6'+ wings who can slide between guarding a point guard and a power forward without missing a beat. The Fever do not have that kind of roster, not even close. What they have are elite offensive guards in Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell who are undersized on the defensive end, paired with bigs like Aaliyah Boston who are built to protect the paint, not chase ball handlers around the perimeter. Forcing these players into a switch-everything scheme is like asking a sprinter to compete in a wrestling match. It doesn't matter how athletic or competitive they are. The physical mismatch makes success nearly impossible on a consistent basis, and the numbers confirm exactly how badly this is going. As of right now, Caitlin Clark has defended 42 isolation possessions this season. 42. The next closest player in the entire league, 19. She's defending more than double the isolations of anyone else in professional basketball right now. Let that sink in. In an era where isolation basketball is supposed to be fading, where teams pride themselves on ball movement and spacing and unselfish play, opponents are literally bringing back old-school one-on-one basketball specifically when they play Indiana. They're not doing it because they love ISO ball. They're doing it because the Fever's switching hands them a mismatch on a silver platter, and the easiest way to exploit a mismatch is to clear out and let your best player go to work. Kelsey Mitchell is right there with Clark in the top tier of isolation possessions defended. Multiple Fever players are appearing in the top 10 of that list across the league. The Fever have also switched at a higher rate than any other team in the entire WNBA this season. Not top 3, not top 5, the highest. They are the most switch-heavy defense in professional basketball, and teams are feasting on it like a buffet that never closes. But here's what makes it truly maddening. It's not like this is some newly discovered vulnerability. The Golden State Valkyries ran the exact same approach the game before Portland did: walk into screens, wait for the switch, attack downhill, and it worked. Before that, other teams were doing variations of the same thing with similar success. This isn't a one-game anomaly. This is a pattern that has been building for weeks, visible to anyone paying attention. And yet the Fever keep running the same scheme. No adjustments, no variations, no plan B, just switch everything and hope for the best. It's the coaching equivalent of running into a brick wall repeatedly and being surprised that the wall doesn't move. The question that keeps echoing through every post-game analysis, every fan forum, every group chat is painfully simple. Why hasn't this changed? And the answer to that question might be more disturbing than the problem itself. Every coach in the league has the same scouting report open on their laptop right now, and at the top of every single one, circled in red, highlighted, underlined, is the same directive. Target Caitlin Clark on defense. It's not subtle anymore. It's not something you have to dig through film to notice. It's happening in plain sight every single game, multiple times per possession. Teams are engineering their entire offensive approach around getting Clark switched onto their most dangerous interior player or their most explosive downhill driver. And because the Fever refuse to deviate from their switching scheme, it works almost every time. The data from the past few weeks is staggering. Over a recent 4-game stretch, Clark defended 34 isolation possessions. According to tracking data, that's the most by any single player over a 4-game window in the past 3 seasons. Not just in Indiana, not just among guards, the most of any player in professional basketball over that span. She's being hunted at a rate that is historically unprecedented, and it's not because she's a terrible defender. It's because her own coaching staff is putting her in positions where failure is almost guaranteed. Watch the film from any recent Fever game and you'll see the same sequence play out like a script. The opposing team brings Clark's assignment into a ball screen, the Fever switch. Now Clark is guarding someone 4 or 5 inches taller, 30 or 40 pounds heavier with a significant reach advantage. The rest of the offense clears out, and the player with the mismatch goes to work. Sometimes it's a direct post-up, sometimes it's a face-up drive, sometimes it's just a simple step through that Clark can't contest without fouling, and that's where the real damage happens. In the Portland game, Clark was in foul trouble almost from the opening minutes. She played just 21 minutes in the entire game. 21. The franchise player, the reason people buy tickets and tune in from around the world, was limited to barely half a game because the defensive system put her in impossible situations where physical contact was unavoidable. She finished with 6 points on 1 of 7 shooting. 6 points. From a player averaging over 20 points per game on the season, that's not a slump, that's not an off night. That's the direct, measurable consequence of a defensive scheme that treats her like she's a 6'5" switchable wing instead of a generational offensive talent who needs to be protected. But the damage extends beyond just the stat sheet. There's an energy cost that doesn't show up in any box score. When you spend the entire defensive end fighting through screens, battling for position against bigger players, absorbing contact, and working twice as hard as anyone else on the floor just to stay competitive, you don't have the same legs on the offensive end. Those deep threes that Clark is famous for, the ones she pulls up from the logo that make crowds lose their minds, those require fresh legs and a clear mind. When you've just spent the last 90 seconds getting mauled by a center in the post because your coach told you to switch onto her, those legs aren't there anymore. That mental sharpness fades, the arc on the shot flattens out, and the rhythm that makes Clark special gets disrupted at its foundation. It's a slow erosion that's happening game by game, and it's entirely self-inflicted. Even Sue Bird has reportedly weighed in, encouraging Clark to study every tendency of every player she might be matched up against. Because if the coaching staff isn't going to scheme protection for her, she'll have to manufacture it herself. When a legend of the game is essentially telling you to survive your own system, something has gone deeply and fundamentally wrong. Step back from the X's and O's for a moment. Step back from the switching stats, the isolation numbers, the rotation decisions. Look at the bigger picture. Because what's at stake here isn't just one season. It isn't just a playoff seed or a win-loss record. What's at stake is the development and long-term trajectory of the most impactful player to ever enter this league. Caitlin Clark is still putting up numbers that would make any franchise ecstatic. She's averaging north of 20 points per game. She's dishing out over 8 assists a night. She's creating offense at a rate that puts her among the most productive players in professional basketball regardless of league or gender. The Fever's offense isn't the problem. They can score with anyone. The talent on that end of the floor is undeniable. But defense is where seasons are won and lost. And right now, the Fever are hemorrhaging points at a rate that makes everything Clark does on offense feel like it's being poured into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. They rank near the very bottom of the league in scoring defense, giving up close to 89 points per game, trailing only the worst defensive teams in the entire WNBA. That's a regression from where they finished last season, which itself wasn't exactly elite. And the defensive rating tells the same story. Sitting in the lower half of a 15-team league with a number that suggests they're getting worse, not better, as the season progresses. This matters beyond the current record. This matters because the habits a player develops in her first few seasons tend to stick. If Clark is spending every game learning that defense is a losing battle, that no matter how hard she competes on that end, she's going to be put in impossible positions by her own coaching staff, that creates a psychological template that's hard to overwrite later. The competitive fire that makes her special can only burn so bright when the system keeps dumping water on it. There's also the physical toll. Clark dealt with multiple soft tissue injuries in 2025. Those don't happen in a vacuum. They happen when a player is being overextended, asked to do too much on both ends, ground down by a workload that doesn't account for the punishment she's absorbing. If the defensive scheme continues to force her into physically demanding matchups against bigger, stronger opponents night after night, the injury risk doesn't decrease. It compounds. And an injury to Caitlin Clark wouldn't just derail a season, it would send shockwaves through the entire sport. The Fever currently sit at 4 wins and 4 losses. They're not buried, they're not out of anything. The talent on this roster is good enough to compete with anyone in the league when the game plan gives them a chance. But that's exactly the point. The game plan has to give them a chance, and right now it's doing the opposite. It's making them predictable. It's making them vulnerable. It's turning their greatest asset into a defensive target instead of an offensive weapon. Whether the answer is a complete philosophical overhaul, a shift to more conservative coverages, a willingness to mix in zones and drop schemes, or something more drastic at the leadership level, something has to change, because the rest of the league isn't going to stop exploiting what's working. Coaches talk, film gets shared, group chats light up after every game with clips and breakdowns and tactical notes. The blueprint to beat Indiana is no longer a secret, it's common knowledge. And every week that passes without a meaningful adjustment is another week where the gap between the Fever's potential and their reality gets a little wider. This is a franchise that has a generational talent, a massive fan base, unprecedented attention, and a window of opportunity that most organizations would trade everything for. But windows don't stay open forever. They close quietly while people are busy arguing about whose fault it is that the room got cold. The only question that matters now is whether Stephanie White is willing to put everything she believes about her system on the table, look at the evidence honestly, and make the changes that this roster desperately needs. Or whether pride and stubbornness will turn what should be the most exciting era in Fever history into a cautionary tale about what happens when a coach refuses to evolve while the entire league sprints past her. The blueprint is out. The clock is ticking. And right now, the only people who don't seem to realize it are the ones standing on Indiana's sideline.